Hi, I'm Kelly and thanks for joining me today where we will be learning how to make increases for a large bust in a crocheted sweater so it can look nice and smooth across the front with no excess fabric in the back. Let's get started. So let's get started learning how to add bust increases to crocheted sweaters. My favorite way to make a crocheted sweater with no pattern is top down because you can try it on as you go and adjust things immediately. And my favorite way to do that is a raglan, which this is a tiny example of. But before we can get into how to adjust it, I want to make sure that you understand how to set one up. And so I just have my quick notes here. To start a raglan, you make a chain, which is your neck hole. And then you split that into 4 equal pieces of the same number of stitches. And here on this sample, I did 6. So 6 on each side, and then I join and turn at the back to avoid the stitches sliding over on me, so that's why I've got 3 and 3. And so that's what your beginning chain will look like. And then what I like to do, at least on simple stitch patterns like here I'm just using half double crochet, is I will work up to the stitch before my marker, do an increase, just put 1 stitch in the marker and do an increase on either side of the marker all the way around. That makes sure that what will become your shoulder seam stays aligned. And as you go along, you end up with this shape where you're doing the increases right here. This will be your neck hole, and you'll fold it up like this. And these will be your armholes in the front and back of your sweater. And so what you do with this is you just keep going in this pattern until you try it on and you realize that the front and back, when it's folded over, will reach under your armpit where you want the seam to be. And then you just add a few chains underneath to connect the front and the back. And that's your sweater. There's absolutely no seaming. You can try it on and adjust it as you go, and you'll get a perfect fit. And then from here, you just pick up stitches and work around for your sleeve, pick up stitches and work around for the body, and that's it. The only drawback of doing it that way is the front and the back are going to be exactly the same size. And if you have a large bust, obviously you need the front to be bigger. So let's learn what we can do about that. The very easiest way to do this is to just start with more stitches in the front. Instead of having 6 on each side, here I've put 10 in the front, and that just makes the front a little bit wider. And it may seem kind of counterintuitive to make the front wider if you are like me and used to your store-bought shirts hiking up in the front seeming too short, but it really does work to make it wider. There's more room up here for the shirt to lay naturally, and so it does help it from pulling up at the bottom. You know, you could take a measurement across the back of your shoulders and across the front of your bust and, you know, get a percentage and give it a pretty good guess that way as to how many stitches you want there. And that's the first way to add in the front. The next way will be to add increases to the front. You can just add increases randomly through here, but I often find that depending on your stitch pattern and yarn, that you can see them, and it just breaks up the eye to have little bumps of increases all over. So I like to put the increases in a more structured way. On this particular one, I've done essentially like darts, a wedge down the front of the middle, and I think this looks very natural because even someone without a large bust, the shirt is growing. It's smaller here and bigger as it goes along, so putting a wedge in the middle looks quite natural. I especially use this method if I'm doing any kind of stitch pattern that's going to create a vertical column that the eye wants to follow. For example, here I did a little V stitch. Let me bring the light closer and I hope you can see. You can see the columns of V stitches that I've made, and the eye wants to follow into a straight line. And I've made just 1 column in the brown, and then right here and here in the red, I've done an increase so that the column spreads out and becomes 2 columns But yet down here, you've still got nice rows of increases. So the eye still follows it quite well. And it looks quite natural for the sweater or garment to get bigger at a place where your body gets bigger. So this is definitely the method that I use if I have any kind of stitch pattern where the eye can see the stitch pattern. Another method, if you don't want to break up the look on the front of the garment at all, is to stack the increases right under the underarms. I usually do this right after I join because I find that to be the easiest. And you can put, just a few or as many as you need. And that'll still give you that bigger measurement here without breaking up the visuals in the front here. And I should mention on both of these, if you have a large bust but a smaller waist and you want to later decrease, on both of those, you can just repeat the same method backward to do your decrease down. Another way to make the front of the sweater bigger is, in this one, we're actually going to make it longer. After I joined here, I started making bigger stitches in the front than I did in the back. So I started here. I've been using half double crochet all along. I started with half double crochet stitches, made a couple double crochet, and then I came in here and I'm doing a link treble crochet. And then on the other side, I tapered back down. And I repeated that for a couple of rows here. And you'll just repeat that however many times you need in order to make sure that the shirt isn't going to hike up at the bottom. So another way to do a top-down sweater is to do a circular yoke. I kind of wish I had learned this one earlier because it's so simple. Basically, you just make your neck hole and then you make a donut. You follow the same formula for your regular flat crocheted circle. The only difference is there, when you do your increases, you'll do 1, 2, 3 stitches, increase, 1, 2, 3, increase. And the next row, you'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, 1, 2, 3, 4, increase. When you're doing a sweater, you want to kind of stagger those because you may have noticed when you stack your increases, you get a little bit of like a corner where the increases are, and this will keep you as a nice smooth donut. And just a little tip, if you want to know how many increases to use on this row, what you'll do is either make or just visualize a regular flat crochet circle, chain the number you need for your neck hole, and then just put them in there and count how many increases you have on that row, and that'll tell you how many increases to start with here. But the nice thing about this yoke is, similar to the raglan, you just fold it up, put a couple chains here, and these become your sleeves and your body. But since you're not putting a line of increases here that you need to run down a specific part of your shoulder, you don't have to pinch it in the middle. I can pinch it way back here, and that ends up with the front of the sweater significantly bigger than the back. This is so simple, I wish I would have tried it earlier, but I didn't know about it, so I hope that I can help you learn about it, and you can try it right away. The last kind of sweater I want to talk about is a seamed sweater. Now, with most seamed crochet patterns, like this, you'll make a front and a back that are exactly the same. It'll be a square for the body, square for the arms. It might even be made in one piece, like I made this swatch. Two of them exactly the same. Seam them up here where I've done this very visible seaming just so that you can see where it's seamed at. The first time I tried adjusting a seamed pattern like this, I just made like a size large in the back and a size extra large in the front. But that didn't work out at all because I had a completely different number of stitches to try to stitch together, and it stuck out in places that weren't where I wanted it. And overall, I wouldn't recommend that. What I would recommend instead is putting in the darts very similarly to what we did on the top-down sweaters. After you make the back piece and you're starting the front piece, your edge stitches need to be the same number as on the back, but then once you get to past the stitches that you'll use to seam, then you can put in your increases again. And then when you get past the increases, you can decrease them back down. And then when you seam it together, you'll have the same number of stitches across the top, under the arms, and down the sides, but you'll just have inserted more stitches into the front. And this one, I know it's hard to tell because of the size, but I actually stacked these under the armpits like we did on the others. And here I added it in the front. And here I went ahead and added the decreases, the matching decreases as well. And you can kind of see that makes a nice rounded shape, which is of course obviously what you want over the bust. And I'm noticing through the viewfinder here, it looks a little bit like I've got a start of a Pikachu happening here. Happy little accident. I hope this video has been useful in showing you a few ways that you can add bust increases on a crocheted sweater, either that you're designing and making yourself or that you're learning from someone else. Thanks for joining me.